How's it going, Daniel? You doing all right?
Yeah, good man. Yeah, thanks heaps for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know it's a little bit of a time difference. You're in Australia, I'm in Florida, so but we made it work. That's the important part.
100%.
Yeah, man. So let's just jump right into it. So just to tell us a little bit about yourself from what you know, where you're from, and give us a little backstory on you, and go from there.
Yeah, no worries. No, well, like I said, cheers for having me on, Phil. So, look, a little bit about my backstory. I grew up in New South Wales, Australia, and really, like from the get go, I had extreme difficulties with, reading and writing, spelling, dyslexia, ADHD. So, like, all the way through primary school, I was just that far behind. I couldn't read. I couldn't spell. I remember, like, you remember different things that happened. I remember one day I studied so hard for a test, and I remember going to the teacher and being like, "Oh, how did I go?" I was sort of excited that, and it was just this look on her face of like, if I could feel that she felt my pain, because she was like, "You got every answer wrong," and so, but I mean, that sort of carried on, and by the time I got to high school, I would just literally sit there and do nothing. I did no homework, no work. I wouldn't do anything. Like, I guess this is a public education system, and these guys are probably that stretch that, kids that sort of fall behind in the cracks, that there's really no support for them. There was no, at the time, sort of no programs that took kids out and would help them with their strengths and abilities instead of working so much on their weaknesses. So, this day and age, I still really can't spell. And that's like, it's really, really frustrating. And like, if I was, like, say we were at a seminar on, how to do podcasting, and people would be writing notes, I wouldn't be able to write notes.
Hmm.
And even if I do write notes, I can't even read my own notes back. So it's very frustrating. But like, I've had several successful businesses, and I've learned to work around it. But yeah, it was definitely, a struggle. So this day and age, I use a lot of ChatGPT. I speak into the phone. For my previous businesses, if I had to send a quote, sometimes if I couldn't spell a word, or sometimes I'd just dictate the whole email. Dear customer, whatever, blah blah blah. And so I've worked around it, but it's quite, it's been embarrassing along the way. And even like, I was quite successful in a sales career. I was selling solar for a while, and like, there's been times where I'm in a face to face meeting, like an in home sales, selling them solar, and like, I'm trying to not make it look like I'm an idiot because I can't spell, and I'm trying to, send them the quote or whatever. So I'm trying to work around it in the moment, and it's been challenging. I mean, that was my schooling. By the time I got to year 10, which is, roughly around 15, I was wagging every day, started smoking pot. I guess, I had no, um,
No
uh,
direction, maybe.
well, yeah, no direction, but no self-confidence. Like, I had a lot of those, "You're an idiot, you're not good enough, you're a piece of shit," all these, sorry for but all these things, and I guess I was looking for acceptance, and, I started hanging out with the kids that were smoking pot, and, doing drugs, and, I was very blessed that I had a good, you know, family. I think a lot of guys in prison that had these real struggles with, reading and writing and, academic stuff, maybe they didn't have as good a home as me, and I think that's why eventually I turned my life around, and that's sort of what gives me the momentum to do what I'm doing now. So, but yeah, so, when I was sort of 15, I started wagging school every day, and then, soon the next sort of 10 years was just, doctor shopping every day, which is, basically going to a doctor and, telling him you've got some sort of problem, and getting, I was getting opiates, I was getting, dexamphetamine, I was getting Valium, Xanax, all these types of drugs, and so, I was breaking into places, I was, stealing every day. I would sort of go into places like Kmart. This is before we had phones and cameras and that. And I would steal a backpack. I'd walk into the back of the, behind the desk where they had all the stuff, and I would fill up a backpack full of stuff, and I'd run out the exit. And I was doing a lot of graffiti. Just that whole 10 years was just a real, like, hectic time in my life. And, I met my wife when I was 23, and I wanted to change, and I started getting some training and started doing some courses and different things like that. But it's been a real process, and it's
Hmm.
been a real journey, and it's been difficult. So that's why my show is called a Long Way Round Show, because it's been, a long journey going right around. But now, I want to be able to help others, and I've started the Long Way Out project, which aims to help men and women coming out of prison with support, guidance, training, and we want to be able to help these people to in a nutshell, like, believe in them before they can believe in themselves. Because as I said, my father believed in me, and he always said you can do whatever you put your mind to. But a lot of these people, they don't have anyone. Some people, they got no license for 40 years and a big criminal record and all these things hanging over your shoulder, and it makes it super difficult to change. A lot of people, they want to change, but it's like, it's almost like, oh, well, the world thinks I'm a piece of shit, so I may as well be a piece of shit, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
that we want to be in people's corner.
and that's why I dig what you're doing so much is because you're really helping people. I've never been to jail, I've only gotten speeding tickets, you know what I mean? But I would never condone somebody for being in prison unless they were touching kids. I would assume coming out of the prison system, you have no safety net. I hear in America when you get out of prison and you've been in there for X amount of years, they give you $200 and say fuck off. You know what I mean? Because here it's a privatized, profitable industry. I don't know how it is in Australia where you're at, but me, that's one of the worst things that you can do is that when try to make profit off of someone suffering like that, it's just, and then the next thing you know, people are getting put in prison for dumb stuff that doesn't, or they're being kept in for weed offenses. And I don't know, I don't know what the laws are where you are with weed, but here it's basically legal in most states as far as for medicinal, and some states have recreational use, but it's still on a federal level, it's still illegal. So you get people that go to prison for weed next to murders and rapists and all that other stuff, and it's like, and then you get a normal guy going in, he's made a mistake, and and it's like some gladiator school, and he comes out worse than he went in. I have a half brother right now; he's on the tail end of a 26-year sentence
Wow.
at a federal prison here in Florida.
Wow.
And granted, he deserves to be in there. He was doing script writing. He got a hold of a doctor's script pad and was writing phony scripts, and he had done that before, and the judge was like, you know what, I'm kind of tired of looking at you. Bang, gone for 2 decades. And but with what you're doing, with you're giving them a platform or a place to land to help them kind of get back on their feet and to give them the proper guidance. I just think that's brilliant. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Phil. Look, and in Australia, we do have privatized prisons and things like that, but we're very lucky in Australia that our law is not as crazy as in America. Like, you can do an offense in America, like, say your brother got 26 years. Like, in Australia, I think you'd be, unless you were like a real serial offender, or you had a big, scheme, and you had like 50 notepads or whatever. Like, but even that, you'd be lucky to do 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah, our legal system is probably a little bit more. I don't know if the word's lenient, or yeah, but, like, I see things in America where they get, like, free life sentences or whatever, and in
Mhm.
Australia, yeah, I don't wanna mention any crimes, but,
Of course not.
more of the severe crimes, you might get 20 years in Australia, you might get 150 years in America. So, yeah, I think America, and I think that is maybe because of that whole profit system or whatever, but yeah, I think there's been some changes over there. There's a lot of people trying to help that stuff, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's like, I'm sure 26 years for your brother-in-law for writing scripts didn't help him, you know what I mean? I'm sure, like, maybe 5 years or something, like, don't do it again sort of thing, but 26 years.
Well, I think because he has the priors, I think, it was like he's done some other stuff too that's way worse than script writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I think that, but he never applied himself. He never wanted to. You on the other hand wanted to. You wanted to be better. You wanted to, but you were kind of just dealt this hand. Like, I'm dyslexic as well. You know what I mean? So it was not very easy to overcome. Mine, fortunately, is more like numerically for me. So I can't do math very well. And then the idea that anybody's ever going to use calculus outside of high school is ridiculous anyways, unless you're going to be unless you're going to be like some science guy or something. It's sometimes when you're dealt a rough hand in life, like whether it's bad parents or just some sort of trauma that will derail who you are, because when something hurts you at a young age, they say you're young and impressionable for a reason.
Mm.
And then when that thing, it kind of goes into your head and it just stays there, and it's all you think about. Like you were saying, you're not good enough, you're not whatever. That's how my father treated me.
Yeah.
He was born in 1927 and he worked on a farm and he had no education. So he was just projecting on me his, his deficits.
Mm.
So, I understand where you're coming from with that whole feeling of worthlessness and that you're not good enough.
Yeah. It's interesting, sort of a little bit off topic, but it's interesting about your brother-in-law with the script writing, like, I wonder how many people got caught up in that opiate epidemic, like, because I broke my leg really bad when I was about 20. I snapped both bones out the skin, and then for years after, I was abusing, like, Oxycontin, and that was, like, a huge thing in the States, and we sort of got the tail end of it over here, and yeah, that was a huge big thing. I've seen a few, documentaries on that stuff.
Yeah, I know that he went in 2008, so he's been in there for a while, and I know that he was just a drug addict. That was his thing. Like, but so and he just had so many different other issues. Like you couldn't tell him anything. He knew everything, all that, and he just didn't give a shit. Was the biggest thing is that you have to have somebody that wants to care and that wants to be able to make them make something of themselves. As as the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, you just can't make it drink.
100%. And that's, a big thing of what we wanna do. We wanna be able to be there for people, be in their corner, but at the end of the day, you gotta make the right decisions. You gotta keep showing up day after day, and the reality is, like, if we can help someone, what we're gonna do is gonna be a tiny percentage of what they're gonna need to do.
Right.
They're gonna have to really, really push hard, but if I hope that, if myself and other mentors can be in their corner and sort of be their cheerleader for them, and
Mhm.
encourage people, that's what we wanna do, but yeah, the people or the ladies or the men are gonna have to do a huge amount of work, and it takes years, you know what I mean? It takes years and years and years, like, even now, I'm still dealing with the process of, that journey of ongoing healing and, bettering myself, but
Mhm.
also, yeah, just that whole process of, coming out of, when you do stuff your life up, when you do make poor decisions, so, yeah, it's a
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, and I think once someone does get out, and this is someone who has, I'm a complete novice at this. When you come out, you need a regimen, you need a routine, and you want to surround yourself with positive, good people. But sometimes you can slip back into that element pretty easily. All
And
it takes is just one night out, bumping into an old friend from that time of your life, and the next thing you know, you're doing what you're not supposed to be doing anymore. So it is a lot of work, but and it takes a lot of mental and physical fortitude to be able to do it.
because we all looking for acceptance, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
we all want to feel loved. We all wanna feel like we fit in, and, when you've had a life of doing the wrong thing, sometimes you don't fit in with normal, society and things like that. Like, I remember, vividly, like, when I was about 21, I started going to church and I was trying to do the right thing, but like the other kids at the church, like, and God bless them, they had great lives, and I'm sure they had struggles as well. But I was a full blown drug addict and a criminal, and they were like, finishing their degrees and starting businesses, or working in their parents' business, or they had cars and they were starting to buy houses and different things like that. And yeah, it was really hard to fit in. So, where I fitted in was with the drug addicts and with the criminals. And even later on, like, I sort of moved away for a little while, and then I started going back to church after my father died. He had a motorbike accident when I was 25, and sort of I went off the rails a little bit again, and but I started going back to church, and I was trying to do the right thing and be part of the community and stuff like that. But I still was really struggling to get any good jobs, and we didn't have a house. Like, we had a house, but we didn't own a house, and I didn't have a trade, or I really didn't have any skills, and people my age were, moving, progressing into their life. So, yeah, it's a huge thing, like, to be able to fit in and to feel normal and all those types of things. And it's not necessarily that, you have to be normal or you have to be the same as anyone else, but it is a tricky thing.
Well, if everybody was the same, the world would be an incredibly boring place. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes us all unique under God is the fact that we are different. When I was in high school, I was one of those. I was invisible. I fell through the cracks. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't a nerd. I was just me. I had two good friends Chuck and Dennis, and that was it. And we would pal around. We were really big into martial arts, all of us, and we would fucking spar and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, that was had that at least, but still to this day, I'm 46. I'll be 46 next month, and I still have a hard time making friends because it's just who I am. I'm a very blunt person, and I have a bunch of boundaries and people don't like it when you have that. but what fitting in is you have to find your tribe, right? As the saying goes, and sometimes that could be a harder thing to do, especially when you find a false one. Does that make sense? Like you think you found your people, but they're not. You know?
Yeah, no, I relate to that a lot as well, Phil. Like, that's been a huge thing for me. Like, I think, isolating and not wanting to ring people or not wanting to connect with people. And I don't know if, like, deep down there's something of not wanting to be rejected or not wanting to be heard or, yeah, just, yeah, I relate to that a lot, Phil, as well.
Yeah. Well, then sometimes you just feel like you don't want to bother somebody. You're like, oh, I don't want to interrupt their life, but I mean, a text is a text. They don't have to answer it right away, but it's just that. My girlfriend's getting me out of that shell. It's like, hey, text Christy. He's a good friend of mine. Him and we have good conversations, and he likes good beer. I like good beer, and there you go. So it's all I really need. And I got other friends too that I game with on Tim and Zahar. They're great people. So I have people in my life that are my close knit people. But back to what we were talking about, when I'm trying to figure out like at what from my brother, half brother, I even call him. I want to know like what did it for him. I wonder if it was like a lack of discipline in his life that made him say, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna go do all this ridiculous stuff." Is it because there has to be a catalyst somewhere for someone to want to say, "What's like?" There's a breaking point for everything. So I would love. I guess that's probably an individual basis kind of thing. You know what I mean? To say what there's always that catalyst and something that's going to make people snap per se. And just or it's just that one little push.
I mean, look, it's interesting. I know with the addiction stuff, they call it, I don't know what they call it. They call it a lot of things, but I mean, it's addiction, it changes you know what I mean? So, with your brother or with whoever, like, you don't start out thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna start robbing people, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do
Mhm,
that." Like, it just sort of takes a hold of you, and, it's not to be made an excuse of, but, yeah, it's unmanageable, it's unpredictable, it changes people, and, yeah, when you're in serious addiction, like, you'll do whatever you gotta do to get the drugs, and there's no, you know what I mean? There's no boundaries. Every day is just I've got to get whatever I've got to get to get high, and like rational thinking, you would think like, all right, well, if I do this, I'm going to go to jail for 5 years. Is that really worth it for one shot? But
mhm.
when people are sick and unwell, that you're not thinking like that. So yeah, it's
That makes sense because of the brain chemistry could be changed if it's opioids or whatever.
mm,
It comes to the forefront. Like as that there was a kind of like a mockumentary thing on Netflix. It was about the opioid crisis here in America and the Purdue family that started it, and they were basically selling heroin in pill form. So in the show, the character that was playing the Purdue person, I think it was Purdue, was saying we want to run away from pain and run to pleasure. And I think the drug will chemically change or alter, your brain, and it's just all you want to. It's like when I was a smoker, it's like, I could shut it off for 12 hours when I was at work because I work in a hospital, you're not allowed to smoke on campus.
mm.
So, but as soon as I got into my car and was on the way, I was lighting a cigarette, so obviously that's not crack. So it's a little bit of a different thing. I'm not trying to compare myself to someone who's in the real throes of addiction.
No, and I always used to that was like you always used to have a joke, like, cigarettes and coffee are sorta like the best drugs in a way because especially coffee, like, you can have a coffee every morning and you're not going into breaking into a chemist or robbing a drug dealer or selling yourself or whatever,
Mhm.
and, same with cigarettes really, but, yeah, it is a bit of a funny joke, but yeah.
I
Uh,
just recently saw what the price of a pack of cigarettes is in Australia. It's like $48 a pack or something like that.
Oh, man, it is crazy. Yeah, it's like I think I've just been trying to quit this week, but yeah,
Mhm,
I've had a couple of good days and a couple of bad days. I've been on the patches, but yeah, I smoke the rolly tobacco,
mhm,
but yeah, I think now I don't know why they've done it, but you used to be able to get like 15 gram, 30 gram, so on and so forth. But now they've made it you can only get it in one size pack, which is even for the rollies, it's like just under $100 for a 30-gram packet. Yeah,
Jesus.
and I think, you used to be able to get, like, 20s, 25s, 30s. I don't know the tailor-mades. I don't know the exact sizes because I don't smoke them because 'cause they're too expensive, but I imagine,
Right.
yeah, it'd be your minimal budget brand would be, like, $50 a packet, and some people smoke a packet a day, so it's crazy.
Yeah, but just goes to show you that people will do whatever. I mean, and like me, it's coffee. I have 4 cups a day, and I don't, and it's pretty strong, but so it just keeps me even.
Yeah.
I gotta ask because you're one of the few people I've actually talked to that's from Australia. I've always wanted to go, so I just want to know, like, what can you? I mean, you don't have to divulge like your neighborhood or anything, but what part are you in?
I'm in a place called Lake Macquarie, which is, it's basically Newcastle,
Okay.
which is about 2 hours north of Sydney. So if you think of Sydney Harbour Bridge,
Hmm.
and then you got in the car and drove 2 hours north, so north would be towards Brisbane. Yeah, we're 2 hours for 2 hours from Sydney, and then if you keep driving, we're probably another 8 hours to Brisbane. So, yeah, we're
Okay.
on the east coast of Australia. I also used to live on the west coast. I lived in WA for quite some years. But yeah, it's a big cool country, and yeah, there's a along the coastline, there's a lot of cool stuff, but on the inside, there's a lot of desert and not too much out there. I mean, there's Ayers Rock, which is pretty cool, but yeah, there's I've actually driven across twice as well. It takes about 4 days. Yeah,
Wow.
4 solid days. It's about roughly 4,000, kilometers, which I don't know how to work that out in miles, but yeah, it's roughly 4 10-hour days. But I think America, like, if you were driving across America, it'd be what would that be? That'd be, like, even more, eh?
Maybe not. Like I know it takes if you're driving, probably to get from, let's just say, like what, like Virginia to California, it probably takes you about 2 or 3 days as well. I mean, I've never been to California because you couldn't pay me to go there. It's 3,000 miles, probably around 4,000 kilometers, maybe 5,000.
Yeah. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure every mile is half a kilometer, roughly.
I think so. Yeah. So
Yeah, maybe 1,000 ballpark. Yeah, so probably a little bit bigger, but yeah, that's interesting. There's been a few people that have said they wouldn't go to California if they had to or whatever.
and it's like it really depends on your politics. I don't know what kind of politics you guys have in Australia, but here there's pretty much two. We have Democrat and Republican. I'm in the middle of that shit. I'm a right leaning centrist, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't care what anybody does. I don't care, your personal freedoms or your job or whatever, or your business. But I'm like I tell everybody, I said, you can keep your hands out of my pockets, keep your hands off my guns, and I'm not paying for anybody's fucking abortion. That's just where I'm at. Like here, and our country is constantly divided because of, there's only, they say that we have the illusion of voting and all that. We really don't. It's all, we can go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole if you want, but it's like this whole thing with us getting involved with this Iran bullshit.
Mm.
I'm like, why? Why are we doing this? Because we're doing the bidding of Israel. I hate to say it, but now the new American dream is to leave, because
Wow.
it's, everything is getting expensive, more so than it used to be. Gas is almost $4 a gallon, give or take wherever you're at. In some places like California, it's $5 and $6 a gallon. You know, it's not what it once was, and I don't think it ever will be again, no matter how much Trump says he'll want to make it great again. You know?
Mate, we're in the same predicament in Australia. Like, I think a lot of people still want to come here, which is great, and I want to be grateful that I'm in a great country because we really are in a great country in Australia. But like the price of housing and things like that. So where I live, like the average house is like just a medium house would be like minimum like $1 million. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
like once upon a time, like when I was growing up, like you could have, say, maybe mum working at Coles and maybe dad was, at a butcher shop or whatever, just, your normal everyday working family. And you could do really well. And back in those days, like if dad worked in the mines or was doing, some of that fly in, fly out work or different things
Mhm.
like that, on that sort of $100,000 to $50,000 salary, like you were really doing well, you know what I mean? You would have had cars and motorbikes and houses, and I mean, a lot of them guys seem to waste a lot of the money as well. But yeah, so once upon a time, like if you earned like $2,000 a week, you were like, yeah, I'm doing really well. Rent's 300, 400, whatever. I could save a bit and do whatever. Now, you need really, two people earning really good money to survive. It's
Yeah.
hard.
And that makes me wonder if it's like a grand design because it used to be the same way here. I can remember as far back as well, I was born in 79. I can remember that, just 20, 30 years before that, a mom could stay at home with her children and and the father could provide and then made a good living. I don't understand is why has that changed so much? Like what's the difference between now and then? I understand that technology changes and all that, but it should make it easier, not should make it worse.
Well, we've got a housing crisis in Australia. I don't think you guys have got the same thing over there, but they're bringing in so many migrants, which is great, and
Oh,
I've got no problem with anyone coming in, but
right.
we don't have the houses, so the house prices keep going up. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, essentially. And there used to be a great middle class in Australia, and now there's sort of that middle class is really gone. And the thing is, the people at the top, the politicians, whatever side they're on, they've all got big portfolios, property portfolios, and things like that. So
Yeah.
we've got a big Ponzi scheme as a housing market in Australia. It's sort of yeah, they the more people they let in, the more richer they get. So it's
Yeah. Well, it's the
crazy.
same here. I mean, we've had an immigrant crisis for the last 4 years here, and now with everything going on with Iran, it's very much now they're talking about there's over 1,000 sleeper cells here in America, allegedly. I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you, because I'm just not. But it sounds like there's a lot of similarities going on in both of our countries. And it's sad to see because I want everybody to be happy, healthy, and have a place to live and all that, and to be safe. I don't want to see anybody destitute and can't make a living or be able to feed their family. No one wants to see that. And if they do, they're fucking evil.
100%. No, well, I mean, because obviously I'm talking to a lot of different people with what I'm doing and meeting different organizations and that, and I'm hearing a lot that not only people that are really homeless are struggling, like there's people that have jobs and have houses that are going to these, food banks and needing
Uh-huh.
to get extra food and extra help. Like that's a really sad place when our country's put ourselves in that much of a, pickle where, people that are actually working are needing to go and get, food stamps or not so much food stamps, but, food,
And
uh,
some assistance of
low
some
cost
sort.
food,
Yeah.
assistant food programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have those here. A lot of our churches here in the US, they'll do food banks and you
Yeah.
could donate. I like to do that. I like to go help when I can. I make a good living. Well, I'm a surgeon's assistant. I help like somebody breaks a bone and they have to fix the bone. I'm there helping the doctor do it. Been doing that for 20 something years and it's afforded me a good life. I take that back. The last like 2 years, it's afforded me a good life. Before that, I was lucky if I was making $20 an hour. You know what I mean? Now it's a bit different. I work the weekends and it frees me up to do this, hang out with cool people like you and all that. So it's affording me a better life and I can help people when I can. You know what I mean? So be able to network and talk to people like yourself and just learn different perspectives is cool. What are some of the things you're working on now with your project, like the long way around? What's
Yeah,
going on there?
so look, I mean, obviously, well, not obviously because I haven't told you before, but we're in very early stages. So, like, I started this podcast or my podcast that I've started probably in the last, couple of months, and through doing that, speaking to different people, and you know, I thought, I wanted to. The podcast was really to inspire people that people can change, and sort of through doing that, it was like, well, this is great, but there needs to be something more. So I started this project called Long Way Out Project, and as I said before, we want to help people, guide people, mentor people, just be in their corner. So, really, we're in really early stages. I've built a website for it. I've got like a Facebook group. I've got an admin lady who's sort of helping me behind the scenes, like she's in a voluntary type role. I've got some other people as like ambassadors, and I got another lady who she used to work as a nurse inside the prison, but she also inside prisons, I should say. She also used to run a on the health on the streets. It was like an old ambulance where they would go around and homeless people would, get their bloods taken and sort
Uh-huh.
of dress any wounds and different things like that. So she's sort of helping me engage with the community. And so I've got a few things in place. I haven't won yet, but I've got selected for this. There's a incentive called Newcastle Awesome. So I'm a finalist this month, so that's going to be really cool. So next week I go in and basically pitch my idea to the board and me and two other charities that are getting off the ground, and that will be potentially we can win $1,000, which will help us get our charities off the ground. So that's really exciting. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, but it's going to be a real process. Like it's one of them things where, I've started this. I really want to help people, but in turn, it'll help myself. And I'm not trying to say I'm any expert or I know anything. I know some things, but I'm still learning as well. I'm growing, I'm healing, and And I find, like, when you get to a place where you can give back, but you're also getting help, it's sort of double win-win. Yeah, I remember when I one of the rehabs I went through, I finished the program, and then every Tuesday I would go and volunteer, and doing that was like a double bonus, you know what I mean? Because 'Cause you're still getting help yourself and you're learning, but you're helping someone who's a little bit further behind you. So, yeah, it's very early stages. There's a lot of I've actually got a lawyer on board as well. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of heavy, bogged down things that you have to go through, because eventually, like, we'll get some government grants and things like that, but it's all a real process. So for me, I've just got to really concentrate on doing the best I can each day, one day at a time, staying positive, keep moving, keep the ball rolling, networking with people. But yeah, it's going to be a real process, and I've just got to enjoy the process, enjoy meeting people, enjoy broadening my network and people I know. And yeah, it's sometimes it can feel slow, but you've really just got to enjoy the process and make the most out of it. We try.
I think you and I are similar in a lot of ways because I'm my own worst critic. I think I suck at everything. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm tying my shoes. You suck. I understand. I get that. So, and also in that process, be sure to take time to be kind to yourself too. Don't ever be too rough on yourself because you're trying to start something. You're trying to start a movement. I'm still starting out, and I'm learning, and you're learning, and it's just a matter of showing yourself a little bit of grace and know that you're trying to help people, and that's the end goal, is to help those and to learn and to move and to grow. So it's always good to take some time out to be good to yourself as well, because like you said, you're still doing your recovery and all that, so you want to be kind to yourself.
Completely relate to where you're at, and a couple of my episodes I did, and then I sort of straight away after I felt a little bit bad, or I sort of messaged the bloke, because some people, you know, especially I interviewed a couple of business people, and they were really well spoken, and they had really great things to say, and I was sort of fumbling my words a little bit. So I hear where you're at, bro, and yeah, it's all good, the power of editing. You know what I mean? You can edit some stuff out, and but yeah, so that's where I've been at. So I'll tell you a little bit about the journey of where I've been up to the last sort of 10 years, and I'm sort of going from being really unemployable to where I am now. Yeah, when I was about 25, and I was involved with the church and doing those things, so I was starting to get a few tickets. So in the mining industry, there's sort of like, well, in really any industry, there's what's called like a labourer, and you might just have a basic white card, and then there's like a skilled labourer. So a skilled labourer, you go and get like a forklift ticket, a truck license, maybe a EWP ticket, and you go and get all these tickets, but then you got to go and get jobs, and you got to um, use those skills to get sort of up trained. And so I would do that. I would get tickets, and then I would go and get some work, and eventually I got my rigger's ticket, which is working with cranes. And my last job, I was on a pretty big job. We were building a power station. I was on the team of a lot of cranes. My own journey, I know the process of, like, slowly building yourself up, building your resume up, building your skill set. And it's a real process, and you can gradually, but gradually. And now, like, my resume, and I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else or that I'm really great, because I'm not, but I've got my Cert 4 in structural landscaping. I've got HR truck license, EWP, rigging, dogging, forklift, all these different things. Like, I could walk onto any job site I want to, you know what I mean, and get a job straight away. I've had several businesses, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a moment. So I can get a really good job really easily, you know what I mean? But that doesn't excite me anymore. What excites me is, helping people, and doing this long way up project. So a couple of months ago, like earlier this year, I was sort of having a bit of time off. I was just sort of in a bit of a place where I was, a bit in between, and I was sort of toying with the idea of starting another business. And I was sort of like, oh, I don't really want to go down that road again. When you're starting those businesses, like those landscaping or whatever, like, every day you're in the car driving around. Every afternoon you'd be going to the tip, and then which is the rubbish dump, and then you'd be, going and seeing customers, quoting, emailing out quotes. Like, it's full on, but it's great. But it doesn't give me any passion anymore. So I was like, all right, I don't want to do that. So that's how I sort of started this. But so my business in WA, which is sort of my probably the best one I had so far. So I started off just cleaning building sites, and I was sort of really thinking like, what can I do? I don't really have much skills. I don't really have much, money or equipment. And I just thought of like cleaning building sites. And so I started talking to builders, and I really grew quite quick. I went from just me to 3 vehicles and 6 staff, and we were sort of teams of two. And what we did was we would basically become like that filling gap. Like sometimes there would be, say, they need to dig a trench out the back of a house, but there's no access for a excavator. Like who they're going to call? They call us, or
Mhm.
they want to. It's a two-story house, and tiles are going to get from the bottom story to the second story. Like the tiler doesn't want to do it, you know what I mean? So they call us. We're like the laborers, you know what I mean? So we're basically like a mobile labor team, and we would clean building sites, we would sweep building sites, we would dig trenches, we would do waterproofing, we would do paving preps, so like moving the sand around. And then eventually, like as we grew, we started doing demolition work. And like a guy that I had as one of my staff, he used to have a big concrete cutting and demolition business. So he started teaching me how to cut concrete. So in part of the business, we started doing like a concrete cutting side of the business. And we started like doing demolition jobs, and we started quoting demolition jobs off the plans. He would sort of, he was teaching me how to do that. And so like as I grew myself, which is similar to now, like I grew my own skill set, and I kept developing. And yeah, so then we started doing, 20, 30, $40,000 demolition jobs, which was quite cool. And yeah, we kept growing the skill set, growing the tools, growing the equipment. And
Mhm.
then, when I moved to when my second daughter was born, we were living in Western Australia, but all my family was in New South Wales, which is on the other side of the country.
Mhm.
So we were like, well, we want to be over closer to home. You know what I mean? We want to be closer to the kids' family, and hopefully someone to be closer for support and things like that. So we sold that business, and that business is still going. I sold it to a friend, and he's got that going quite well. So that business would be like 10 years old now. That's really something that that I started, that I'm quite proud of. So that went quite well. But so when I got to New South Wales, I started a demolition business, and this is sort of uh, it was a good thing, but it was another, like a sort of another down path in the road. So what happened was I started going really big really quick, but I didn't have the infrastructure, the team to do it. So we were doing, $30,000 demolition jobs. And like in my old business, because I had grew it for a while, I had the staff and I had the guys, and so I was doing really big jobs, but I didn't have the team built. And I was really burning the candle at both ends. I didn't realize in the time, but I was in the process of having a big mental breakdown. And
Mhm.
I was staying up I was getting up early, I was staying up late, I was in the process of finding a yard, because I don't know if many people do it over there, but in Australia, there's a thing called like a salvage yard.
Mhm.
So sometimes like big demolition companies will have a salvage yard on the side. So when you demolish a house, you can keep all the windows, all the doors, lights, mirrors, or there's a lot of things that are valuable. The floorboards, if you take them up nicely, you can repurpose them. So there's a lot of things that can be used. And so it does two things. One, it keeps your cost for the tip down, or the rubbish place. I don't know if you call it a tip over there.
We just call it a dump here usually, or the
So it
waste
keeps
disposal or whatever. Yeah.
it keeps your dumping fees lower, but it also then you make more profit, because you're not, say you do a $30,000 job, it might be 10,000 is the dumping fees, but then instead of costing you 10 grand, you might make 5 grand from selling the stuff. So you end up, what some companies do is they have a big salvage yard. So you're doing big demolitions, and as you're growing and you're getting more commercialized, like, you might start demolishing like McDonald's, or KFCs, and there might be cool signs or all these different things, and you end up with a big yard. And that's what I was in the process of doing. And I didn't realize I was listening to like Tony Robinson, and I was sort of really moving, operating at a fast pace, which is really great. But I didn't realize my mental health was slowly slipping. And anyway, one day I drove to Coffs Harbour, which is probably, it's about maybe 4 or 5 hours away. And I drove down there, and then I was really delusional. I was ringing people, and I was making these business plans, and some of it was true, and some of it was like I was sort of off the Richter. I was having a mental breakdown. And anyway, I drove back from Coffs Harbour at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. I was going like 200 k's an hour, and I ran out of petrol. I ditched the car, and I started hitchhiking. It was the middle of the night. Someone picked me up, and then they took me nearly half the way home. Anyway, so I ended up getting home, and yeah, the next day I was taking some medicine for ADHD at the time, and I think that was sort of had an effect on this mental breakdown. I don't sort of take that medication anymore. But
Right.
anyway, I was driving all across town. I was running through red lights, and I actually pulled over a police lady, and I said, "I don't know where I am." I was really frantic, and the lady, like, let me go. I don't know what her problem was, but she must have thought, "Oh, there's nothing I can do," or maybe it was the end of her shift, and she just wanted to, knock off or whatever. But anyway, she said, "Oh, well, I don't know what your fucking problem is." Anyway,
Mhm.
I ended up running out of petrol in the other car, and I was walking around the bush. I thought I was like an Aboriginal elder, like, I thought aliens were trying to get me, it was full on. Anyway, I got taken back to the police cell, police station, and then I was, like, full crazy manic, like, I was like, "Rah, rah, rah," like,
Just had a full blown like disassociative episode, is what it sounds like. Like you just your brain just said, "Fuck it, I've had enough." You burnt yourself out to the point to where it was like, "Hey, I need a break." So you turned into somebody else. You know.
yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, I they took me to like a hospital, and they gave me like an injection to like help me sleep or whatever. Anyway,
Mhm.
I thought they were trying to kill me. I thought these guys were trying to kill me. So it was full on. Anyway, I ended up in prison the next day, but obviously something had gone wrong in my brain, and I didn't know what was happening. Like I was in the prison greens, and I was on the bus going to the prison, and like the radio station, like the songs, I thought they were talking to me, and for like about literally like about a month, I was in this cell, like isolated, because obviously the nurses didn't want to let me out into the normal population, and I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was on a spaceship. I still thought the guards were trying to kill me. I th- I thought it was like just a big trick. I thought like people in the next door were like famous people that were yeah, like, it was full on, and then I ended up they took me from the jail to, like, a hospital to try and, calm me down, and they did eventually get me on, medication, which helped me come out of my psychotic episode, and then I went back to the normal prison, but I ended up pleading guilty for that because I sorta knew, like, I hadn't been in trouble with the police for a long time, and I could afford it because, like, there's, like, a mental health act and things like that, but it would have taken so much longer to fight the case, and by the time I
Mhm.
got found not guilty, I would have been in jail for maybe 18 months trying to fight it, where I pled guilty. I just sorta, I guess laid on my sword or whatever. I thought I'd just wing it. I'll try to go guilty. And luckily they let me out, and they gave me like a community corrections order,
So
and
it's
I had to
almost
be
like a probation kind of thing, like where so here,
yeah.
yeah, because here we have it's kind of fucked here from what I can gather because it's like you get released from prison, you're on probation for let's say 5 years. Then if you're a felon in this country, you can't get a job, right? Like any decent job, which depends on the felony. For me, like if it's a violent crime, I get it. If it's just like somebody had a pinch of weed in their pocket or some dumb shit like that, it's a different story to me. The problem with probation in my mind is okay, so you're on probation. If you violate or you do something wrong, you go back to prison. Well, it's almost like they're set up for failure here, and it's not fair. People make mistakes every day, but it, I think we touched on it earlier about how it's just when you privatize something and you corporatize something, it gets to be it doesn't like I know in like Sweden and places like that where they actually focus on rehabilitating inmates, they have a much higher success rate than at least that I can speak for in America because the people that come out they just think they're fucked for life.
100%. No, well, I was lucky. I had to do like maybe 100 hours community service, and yeah, sort of on maybe a court order that said if you do anything wrong for the next, 12 months or whatever, you might get in trouble again. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that all sort of went away. But even another part of my story, which is sort of interesting and sort of goes in with what we're talking about. I one time I broke into a chemist, and when I went to court, they didn't know about my WA records, so that the states sort of don't always line up. So there's
Mhm.
been a few times where I was very lucky to avoid longer prison sentences and things like that. So yeah, I've been very lucky. So even though I haven't done a huge amount of prison myself, that I still got a real heart for people that are trying to change and trying to get out of the system that sometimes, like you just said, doesn't help people want to change, or it sort of it can be so heavy that it's not an excuse, but it can be hard to break the mold essentially.
Yeah, it's hard to break that cycle once it gets started. Like I come from a very impoverished family. Like we were poor as shit when I was a kid, and I'm like, I don't want to, like, we were on food stamps, like, and assistance and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I'm not doing that shit as an adult. Like, I lost my job at a hospital that I was working at. It went away because politics in the inside the hospital. So I had to change jobs. I had no savings because I was going through my first divorce. One of my friends, he was suggesting that I go on food stamps. And I said, I'm not doing it, because once you start that cycle, you kind of just keep repeating it. And it's the same as, I feel that sometimes you just need a helping hand to kind of get you in the right direction. But it's also, like you said earlier on, you have to want to in the beginning. You can't just expect things to come to you without any work. And it's takes a lot of soul searching and just a lot of self evaluation to want to go back, to want to get out of that, to break that mold. Like, that's why I went to school to do what I do. So I really want to help people, and I thought being a surgical tech was the best way to do it, and it has it's a rewarding job, but I didn't want to be that poor kid, or as an adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I wanted to be better. Yeah, man. So cool. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this one up. You want to tell everybody where they can find you and all that?
Yeah, if anyone wants to have a look at some of the episodes we're doing, we're Long Way Round Show, and that's on YouTube. We're also on, Spotify and all those types of places as well. I'll send Phil the links and he can put it in the description. But also you can check out our website, longwayout.org. That's cool. And yeah, I'm also on Facebook. So if anyone wants to follow the journey, they can come across and do that. And if anyone wants to, they can come in the group and they can follow the process, follow the progress of where we're up to with the foundation and with the group. And yeah, so that's it, Phil. So all good.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on. I'll let you get going with your day. I'm gonna go to bed. So, all right, man. Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. So we'll talk to you later.
Cheers, Phil. Thanks, mate.